Tonight, you're going to hand someone a piece of paper or tap your phone against a little black box. And in exchange, they're going to give you a coffee, a coat, a tank of gas. You won't think twice about it. You never do. But the real reason this works is far stranger than you've ever considered. That paper isn't worth anything. Not really. It's not backed by gold sitting in a vault somewhere. It's not backed by anything you could hold, weigh, or bite down on to check if it's real. It's backed by something far more fragile and far more powerful. A story. Specifically, the story that everyone else believes it too. Here's the part that should unsettle you a little. If tomorrow, everyone woke up and simply stopped believing that paper had value, it wouldn't. Instantly. No war, no collapse, no single event required. Just a change in belief, spreading person to person, and the story would be over. Your entire financial life sits on top of that agreement. Have you ever actually thought about how strange that is? To understand how something this fragile became the backbone of civilization, you have to go somewhere you wouldn't expect. Not Wall Street, not a central bank. A tiny island in the Pacific called Yap. The economist Milton Friedman wrote about Yap in an essay that's become famous among people who study money for a living. On this island, the currency wasn't paper and it wasn't coins. It was enormous stone discs, some taller than a person, carved from limestone that didn't even exist on the island itself. It had to be quarried on a different island entirely and hauled across dangerous open water on rafts, sometimes at the cost of lives. Here's the strange part. The stones were often too big to move once they arrived, so they didn't move them. A family could own one of these giant stone discs and never once touch it. It might sit in a neighbor's yard for generations, or at the bottom of the ocean after a storm sank the canoe carrying it, and everyone on the island would still agree. That family owns it. That family is wealthy. The stone's location didn't matter. Its size and its history mattered. What truly mattered was that everyone remembered and everyone agreed. Sound familiar? It should. Because most of your money right now isn't sitting anywhere either. It's a number in a database agreed upon by a bank, a payment network, and you. You've never seen it? You've never touched it. You just trust the ledger. The islanders trusted a story about a rock at the bottom of the ocean. You trust a story about digits on a server somewhere you'll never visit. The mechanism hasn't changed in centuries, only the props. For most of human history, though, people tried to make that story feel less like a story. They tied money to something physical you could hold. Gold, mostly. If your paper dollar could always be traded for a fixed amount of gold, the story felt safer. Solid. Almost like it wasn't a story at all, but a fact of nature. Then, in 1971, that safety net quietly disappeared. President Nixon ended the direct convertibility of the US dollar into gold. Overnight, in a very real sense, money became pure agreement. No metal to redeem it for. No physical anchor sitting in a vault somewhere backing every bill in your wallet. Just a shared belief, backed by a government, and reinforced every single day by billions of transactions that all silently agree to keep playing along. You'd think that would have caused a crisis of faith. It didn't, at least not right away. The story just kept being told. Prices adjusted, markets grumbled, and the world, remarkably, kept believing it. Here's the part that really should stop you in your tracks. The sociologist Georg Simmel spent an entire book, decades before Nixon's decision, arguing that money was never really about the metal or the paper at all. He described it as a kind of pure relationship, a claim on trust that gets passed from person to person like a promise changing hands over and over indefinitely. Simmel wasn't writing about crypto or digital banking. He couldn't have been. He was writing over 100 years before either existed, and somehow he already understood exactly what money would eventually become. Not a thing, but a relationship dressed up as a thing. You carry that same relationship in your pocket right now, whether you've ever thought about it that way or not. Take a breath. Because this is where the story usually loses people, right before it gets interesting again. Which brings you to the twist that changes how you'll see every dollar for the rest of your life. If money is just a story, then your brain doesn't actually process it the way it processes something real, something physical, something with inherent worth. It processes money the way it processes any other story, through framing, through context, through emotion, rather than through pure logic. This is where the research of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky becomes almost impossible to ignore. Their work on how people make decisions under uncertainty showed again and again that a loss and a gain of the exact same size don't feel the same to your brain. Losing $100 hurts more than finding $100 feels good. Not because the math is different. The math is identical. It's because your brain isn't actually evaluating numbers at all. It's evaluating a narrative about those numbers, and losses simply make for a much scarier story than gains make for a happy one. That's why a sale feels like a victory even when you spent money you never planned to spend. That's why a small daily purchase feels almost invisible, while a single large bill feels like a catastrophe, even when the small purchase quietly costs more over the course of a year. Your brain was never doing pure arithmetic when it came to money. It was reading a story, scene by scene, and reacting to the plot rather than the numbers underneath it. Even the objects you use to hold that story keep evolving, while the underlying agreement stays exactly the same. Consider the newest chapter: digital currencies that exist purely as code, verified not by a government or a bank, but by a distributed network of strangers who all agree to keep the same record. People call this revolutionary. In some ways, it is. But strip away the technology, and it's the Yap Islanders all over again, just with faster water and no canoes. A record everyone agrees to trust, representing wealth that has no physical form you could ever hold in your hand. The story didn't change. It just got a new setting. Think about how strange that would sound to someone from 100 years ago. You try to explain that your wealth exists as an entry, agreed upon by machines you'll never see, in a network you couldn't point to on a map. They'd assume you were describing a myth or a religion, not an economy. And in a sense, they'd be right on both counts. Every economy is a myth that enough people have agreed to keep telling, generation after generation, until the myth simply becomes the water everyone swims in without noticing it's there at all. That's not cynicism. That's just how large-scale cooperation between strangers has always worked, long before banks or coins existed in any form. A story lets millions of people who will never meet each other coordinate as if they were one single organism, trading, saving, building, all pointed in roughly the same direction. Replace the story with nothing, and the coordination collapses instantly. Even though every brick, every field, every factory would still physically exist exactly as it did the day before. Here's where this gets personal. Every single day, you are being handed a version of that Yap Island story. Your paycheck lands as a number on a screen. You never touch it, the same way the islander never touched the stone at the bottom of the ocean. You spend using a tap, a swipe, a glance at your phone. Each transaction is a tiny renewal of the agreement, a tiny vote that says, yes, I still believe in this story, and I'm going to keep acting like everyone else believes it too. This is exactly why watching prices rise everywhere at once feels so disorienting. It's not just that things cost more, it's that the story itself starts to feel shakier under your feet. When the numbers move fast, your brain starts asking the question it usually never has to ask. Wait, is this story still holding up the way it's supposed to? Most of the time, it is. The agreement is remarkably durable. Entire civilizations have run on nothing but shared belief for thousands of years, From stone discs on a Pacific island, to gold bars locked in a vault, to digits in a database that exists nowhere and everywhere at once. But durability isn't the same as permanence. And understanding that your money is a story, not a fact, changes how you should treat it going forward. It means the panic you feel watching a number in your account. Shrink is a story your brain is telling you, shaped by loss aversion, not a pure and objective reflection of danger. It means the confidence you feel when a number grows is also a story, and it deserves just as much scrutiny as the fear does. Neither feeling is wrong to have, but neither one is the whole truth either. It means that when you're deciding whether to spend, save, or invest, the real question isn't only what does the math say, it's also what story am I telling myself about this money right now? And is that story actually true, or is it just the loudest one in the room? The islanders on Yap never confused the stone for the wealth itself. They understood instinctively in a way that feels almost sophisticated by modern standards, that the wealth was the agreement, not the object sitting somewhere out of sight. Somewhere along the way, in a world of paper bills and blinking bank apps, that instinct got buried under convenience. You started treating the prop as if it were the point. So tonight, when you hand someone that piece of paper or tap your phone against the little black box, notice what's actually happening underneath the surface. You're not exchanging value in any pure physical sense. You're renewing a story, one that only works because you and everyone around you keep agreeing, quietly and constantly, to believe it. That's not a flaw in the system. That's the entire system. And the story is only ever as strong as your next transaction.